It was just after dawn when Mark spotted the dog. He had pulled his pickup over on the side of a dirt road, somewhere outside the edge of town, where the houses were sparse and the trees grew wild. The German Shepherd lay curled by a rusted guardrail, thin as wire, covered in dust, and watching with wary, golden eyes. Mark knelt slowly, extending a hand. "Hey, buddy," he murmured. "You lost?" The dog didn't growl, didn't bark. Just stared. Mark waited. Minutes passed. A breeze stirred the dry grass. And then, cautiously, the dog stood and limped toward him. The vet said he had no chip. Malnourished, dehydrated, and healing from an old leg injury, but otherwise stable. Mark paid the bill without hesitation. He named him Shadow, because from the second day on, the dog followed him like one. At first, Shadow was distant. He didn't wag his tail. He didn't play. He didn't bark, ever. Just watched Mark with those deep, unreadable eyes. But Mark was patient. He filled the bowl every morning. Took him on long walks through the woods. Gave him space, and sometimes, quiet company on the porch as the sun went down. It was weeks before the change. One evening, Mark sat on the porch with a sandwich in his hand. He dropped half of it on purpose. Shadow patted over, sniffed it, and instead of simply eating, he nudged Mark's hand gently, like he was asking, "Is this okay?" Mark smiled. "It's yours, Shadow." From that moment, something in the dog softened. By the third month, they were inseparable. Shadow rode in the truck like he'd been doing it his whole life, head out the window, ears flapping. He chased squirrels but never caught them. He barked now, when Mark got home from work, when the mailman came, when he dreamed at night, tail twitching. Mark built him a bed from cedar and old flannel shirts. Shadow never used it. Every night, he curled beside Mark's bed, his chin resting on the floor like a sentinel. And then came the day everything changed. It was a Sunday afternoon, humid and overcast. Mark and Shadow were hiking the trails near Bear Creek, a winding series of narrow paths and shallow cliffs. Shadow led the way, nose low, tail high. They were halfway down the path when Shadow stopped cold. His ears twitched. Then, like a bolt, he ran. "Shadow!" Mark yelled, chasing after him. He found him near the ravine. Below, clinging to a narrow ledge, was a young girl, no older than 10. Her bike was tangled in brush above, and she had slipped down the slope. She was crying softly, trying not to move. Shadow paced back and forth, barking furiously now. Mark slid down carefully, grasping roots and branches, inch by inch. "I got you," he said, reaching the ledge. He looped a rope under her arms, slowly pulling her up as Shadow barked above like a beacon. The dog didn't stop until they were safe. Mark collapsed beside her, heart pounding. The girl hugged Shadow without hesitation, burying her face in his neck. The dog licked her cheek and let out a low, comforting whine. The story hit the local news. "Rescue dog becomes rescuer." Mark just smiled. Shadow didn't care about cameras or headlines. All he wanted was his place on the porch, the quiet evenings, and Mark's steady presence. He had been abandoned once, but now, he belonged. And he protected that belonging with every beat of his loyal heart. 1 year later, Mark woke one morning to find Shadow curled beside the bed, snoring softly. He reached down, scratched behind his ears. "Good boy," he whispered. Shadow opened one eye, yawned, and thumped his tail. For Mark, life had changed the day he pulled over on that dusty road. For Shadow, it had started the moment someone chose to stop. And for both, it was the beginning of something neither had known they were missing, a second chance, and a forever friend.